Hello, welcome. Today we are talking about 10 tips to better practice, more efficient and more effective practice that is going to up your skill as a musician or a vocalist all at the same time, as well as a bonus tip right at the end that's hugely important, so make sure you stay tuned all the way through. Let's get into it. Okay, so this video is part of our Be a Team Master series. It's not just about being a team member, but being the best team member that you can be. So make sure that you watch through these tips. You may even want to share them with your team. Okay, but let's start off with tip number 1, which is value practice. The fact you're watching this video shows us that you already have a value for practice, which is great. Okay, but I was sharing recently some tips around practice with our team, and one of the things that I came across is there's only 2 reasons that we don't practice and don't prepare for a Sunday. One is arrogance. One is that we think that we're that good that we don't need to practice. Okay, but by far the more common one is that we just don't quite value what we're doing enough to put the time into it. And that might sound hard for tip 1 right off the bat, but it's important that we get this right first before we move on to anything else. Imagine an Olympic runner training for the Olympics if he thought, man, I'm that fast, I don't need to train. Okay, he's not going to get very far. Or if he thought, oh, I'm kind of busy, I'm just going to train when I've got time to train, and when I feel like it, again, he's not going to get very far. But the guy who gets up early in the morning so that he can put in the time and the effort because he values where he's going, okay, he's the one that's going to make it, right? And the difference there is that for them, they're doing something for themselves, really. They're representing their country, but it's their own achievement that they're pushing towards. When we serve on a Sunday, we're all about everybody else. So I need to value the people that I'm serving, okay, and the God that I'm serving, and I need to show that I value it by putting the time and the effort in to coming prepared, okay? Big word for tip number 1, but it's true. Okay, let's move on to tip number 2. Okay, tip number 2 is real simple. Set aside the time to practice. You may even need to schedule it. And sometimes it's a matter, if you're like me and you've got a family, sometimes it's a matter of letting people know that this is something I really need to do and I'm going to need time out to do it, okay? Now for me, I practice on a Saturday. Often our songs aren't up until the Saturday anyway. I'm sure many of you can relate to that. But I also like to just be real fresh with stuff. Okay, so I practice on a Saturday, often at night after my young daughter has gone to bed. But my wife knows that on a Saturday, I'm going to need time to practice to prepare myself for a Sunday because that's really important. Cool? Moving on to tip number 3. Tip number 3 is very similar to tip number 2, but it's to allocate space. All right, space where you can get away and you can practice. Maybe it's a spare room in your house. Maybe it's just a corner of a room or a closet or something. Some space where you can shut aside the rest of life for a bit and you can focus, you can tune in and listen, hear what you need to hear, learn what you need to learn, and you've got your allocated time and your allocated space where you can do that focused. Okay, moving on to tip number 4. Okay, tip number 4, invest in some equipment to optimize your practice. Okay, this one is really key, so we're going to spend a little bit of time here and we're covering it specifically for vocals and for musicians. Okay, so you might notice that the audio sounds a bit different in the video in this section, and that's because I've unplugged all of my gear so that I can show you what I'm using. Okay, so for vocals, obviously you're going to need a microphone. This is what I use. It is just a dirt cheap condenser microphone, and in layman's term, a condenser microphone is just a wide area microphone, okay, that's going to pick up a wide area, which is handy because when you're practicing and you might be looking at a lyric sheet and that sort of thing and you're turning your head, it's going to pick you up. I have it mounted on a stand. This is a shock mount that came with it, and it's handy when you're recording, not crucial for just practicing, okay? But I have it mounted on a stand, so again, your hands are free, so if you want to read lyrics or you've got to move the song on the computer over here, you're free to do that, okay? So this point is really crucial for vocals, which we will talk about in a minute after we've shown you all the gear, okay? This is a mixer, okay? So this is a little 3-channel mixer. I've got a stereo channel here, and into that I have plugged this aux cord, and I can just plug that into my computer or my phone if I need to play the song through. So the song is coming in here. I can change its volume, and importantly, I can EQ it right here. So if I want to hear a bass part, I can EQ that so that the bass stands out more, which is probably what I've got there. More bass, more mids, and the highs right off, okay? Or if you want to hear a harmony part, if you're a vocalist, you might have more highs and have some of these other bits lower, but whatever you're trying to hear, you can play around with that EQ until it stands out a little bit more and gets easier to hear. That is really handy. But I also have 2 other channels here, okay? So if you're someone who maybe plays an instrument and sings, you're going to want at least these 3 channels, okay? If you just sing or you just play an instrument, you only really need 2 channels, but you'll find that most of these mini mixers come with 3 channels anyway. And some of this gear, I'll actually chuck some links for Amazon down in the description that you can check out to go and look at some of this gear, okay? I prefer having sliders just because it's handy and it's quick and easy to change stuff, but you don't really need them. Other ones you will see will just have a knob control for volume. But what this means is I can plug my bass or my guitar or whatever in here, or my microphone, and whichever one, okay? And then what I'm doing is I'm mixing myself, what I'm playing, what I'm singing, along with the song, okay? So I'm hearing both at the same time in a good set of headphones, all right? And what that means is that I can hear exactly what's going on, and I'm going to hear the clashes. That's the important part. So if you're a bass player, when that one time in the song where it plays an A over C sharp instead of an A, you're going to hear that because when you play it along with the track, you're going to get a clash with the bass that you're listening to, okay? Now for vocals, this is important because, okay, so when I say for vocals, if you're like a seasoned pro vocalist, you're probably past this point and you don't need to, like, you can sing bang on melody, harmony, whatever all the time. This is more for people who are learning a bit still, which is the majority of our vocalists, right? You know, still learning. One thing this is going to do is it's going to get you used to hearing your own voice, okay? So there's a thing that you might not realize, but the voice you hear in your head is different from the voice that everybody else hears out here. And it's the voice out here that the microphone is picking up and everybody is hearing, right? So even now, as I'm talking to you, my voice in my head will sound to me a certain way. When I watch this video back and I edit it, it will sound a little bit different. And the reason for that is to do with a preview of sound that you get because your ears are close to your mouth and you get a bit of head reverberation and that sort of thing, and it combines together to sound different. And that's why you see people on X Factor who think that they can sing, but they can't because in their head they sound great, but out here they don't, okay? So one thing this is going to do is it's going to get you used to hearing your own voice, because if you use in-ears or foldbacks, which hopefully you use, that is giving you a response of what the microphone is hearing, okay? And sometimes people will hear that and go, oh, that doesn't sound like me, but it does. You're just not used to hearing that version, okay? So using a microphone is going to allow you to hear that version. Again, okay, you are going to hear clashes. So if you're singing along with the melody and you go just a little bit out, you're going to start getting a clash in frequency, and it's going to help you to correct that. So now what you're able to do is you're able to correct your vocal to match what is happening in the song. And by doing that, you are going to get the melody right. You're going to be able to correct yourself. You're going to learn to correct yourself by what you're hearing on the stage, and also you are going to improve your ear, which is absolutely key to vocalists, is having a good ear. Okay, that's where I talk about those seasoned pros that over the years they've developed their ear to a point that they can sing bang on every time, easy, don't have to worry about it. Okay, and that's where we want to get to, and by practicing this way, it's going to help you out. Okay, so let's just talk about the headphones quickly. Okay, so the other point is that you are going to want a decent set of headphones. Okay, this is what I use. These are Sennheiser HD202. These are probably about the cheapest that you want to go. Okay, the more you spend, the better you're going to get, basically. But do some YouTube research as well. When you find something that you think might be right for you, do some research to look up some reviews on it on YouTube and check it out. I'll try and find something good and chuck it in the description there as a link, and I will also put a link to these ones if you're trying to save money, because again, like the microphone is cheap, right? The mixer is cheap for a mixer, because this is all practice at home stuff, right? It doesn't need to be fancy. Okay, we don't need a fancy microphone that's going to sound fantastic unless you're studio recording or doing stuff live, but this is just practice at home. You're the only one that's going to hear it. It's all good. Cool. So check the description for links, but a decent set of headphones are also going to help you to hear everything that you need to hear in that song. Cool. Moving on. Okay, so just a note too on that condenser microphone. Condenser microphone requires power, so when you're buying a mixer, you need a mixer that has a 48 volt power supply that it can send to the microphone in order for the microphone to operate properly. Just a side note to make sure you don't get a mixer that doesn't have phantom power is like the slang term for it, but a 48 volt power supply, otherwise that microphone won't work. Okay, other dynamic microphones generally will, but it pays to get a mixer with that anyway. The other thing that we're going to do now is I'm going to demonstrate to you what that clash that I'm talking about actually sounds like, and for that I'm going to grab my bass because it's the easiest thing to hear it on. Okay, so I've got my headphones on, so just so that I can hear what you're hearing. What we are demonstrating is the clash between notes. When two notes are not right, their frequencies actually don't match up and they clash against each other. Okay, it's easier to hear on the bass because the bass has a long frequency, okay, which means when they clash it's just easier to hear than something with a high frequency that does it very quickly. Okay, so I'm going to play two notes harmonically that are the same note, and then I'm going to drop my tuning on one of the notes so that you can hear how they clash together. And then back. So you can hear how as they go out of tune, the further out of tune they go, the more they fight against each other, right? Those frequencies. And then as we bring it back into tune, you can hear them come back into line again. So again, for vocals, if you sing a note slightly wrong, you will actually hear that clash between what you're singing and the note. You will hear that clash happen, okay? And that's why using the microphone through the headphones mixed with the track you are singing along to is going to totally up your game, okay? And same for musicians. Again, you're going to hear those notes that nobody else hears, that aren't on the chord sheet. Sorry, but like 95% of chord sheets I've seen are either just wrong, or they miss the details, okay, that are in the song when the bass plays a different note than everybody else. Maybe it's an A over C sharp, but the bass actually plays the A one time round instead of the C sharp. It happens, okay, and by practicing this way, you're going to be able to hear it. Cool, let's move on to the next tip. Okay, so tip number 5 now is practice what you already know, okay? And that might sound crazy to some people, but whenever I prepare for a Sunday, I get the set list and I'll have a look and I'll be like, yeah, know that one, not so sure on that one, I know that one, whatever. What I'll do is the one I'm not so sure on, I'll practice that first, but then I will practice the whole set through, okay? Because it's good to be fresh, it's good just to have a reminder, and you don't know what you don't know, okay? So sometimes you will re-listen to a song that you've played 100 times and go, well, actually there's another little guitar part in there, and then you can set about learning that, okay? It happens, but practice the songs that you already know, okay? Because again, it's that lack of value and that little bit of thinking, oh yeah, I know those songs and I'm good enough to pull those off on the fly. Cool. There are times that you've got to do that, but as a habit and a discipline, I always make myself practice the songs that I know as well as the ones that I don't. Cool. Moving on to number 6. Okay, so tip number 6 is more about when you're learning a song for the first time. Now for us, we don't use charts. We memorize everything. A lot of the songs that we do, we actually work out by ear rather than working off a chart. Sometimes if we get a chart to start with, it's a good starting point. But like I said before, there's a whole lot of stuff that's not on the chart or is wrong on the chart, and you got to work all that stuff out. Okay, and then we memorize everything. When we memorize everything, that includes the structure of the song. When it's verse, when it's chorus, when it's bridge, how many times it does this, how many times it does that, how many times does it go through until it plays that one random chord that it just does one time in the entire song. Okay, the key to all of that stuff is to write it down. So as I learn a new song, I'm always writing notes, and so for vocals too, you need to know when you're going to come in. Okay, even if you're not the worship leader, be prepared to sing that first line, because you never know when the worship leader is going to have a mic that's not working, in which case if that happens, give them your mic. That's another complete sidetrack, but you know, they might be mucking around with their ears, or something's happening and they can't sing that first line. They need backing vocals that know exactly when that line comes in and how to sing it. Okay, the hardest thing for backing vocals sometimes is that we think we're just a backing vocal, and then we don't quite learn the song to the level that we need to know it, and then when those things happen, we're not ready. Everything falls apart. Okay, so be prepared to lead even when you're not leading. That's a bit of a sidetrack, but again, writing down structure, just the process of writing it down actually helps you. And when I learn a song, I will write my notes out, especially all the notes that are different, and then I will start practicing with that, and then I will push it aside as I'm practicing so that I can start memorizing. Okay, and then it's still there if I need to pull it back to go, oh yeah, that's right, and then push it away again. Okay, but always listening, memorizing, so by the time I get to the first practice of the new song, it's all in here. I've got no paper with me. Cool, moving on to number 7. Okay, so tip number 7 is to learn new songs even when your team isn't. Okay, so right now, 2020, you know, we've just been through COVID lockdown and all that, and there was no church for ages, so as a team, we haven't done a new song for months on end, but I have, just to keep in the practice of learning new songs, right? I found some new songs that I liked and went, okay, I'm going to learn that song, just to keep in the discipline and the practice of doing that, because it's actually important for developing and keeping your skills. Cool. One of those skills we're going to talk about in tip number 8. Okay, so tip number 8 is one of the most important things that we can do as musicians and especially as vocalists, and that is to train your ear. Okay, having a good musical ear isn't necessarily something that you're born with. Okay, some people are born with it, sure, but if you're not born with it, don't rule yourself out. You can totally train it. That's what I've done. If I was the way that I was born, totally tone deaf, completely. Okay, but I've done a lot of work, a lot of training to improve my ear. Okay, so now, like I say, as a team, we learn most of what we learn. We just learn by ear. We're given a song. This is the song we're going to play. Okay, that's all we're given. We're not given charts or anything. Sometimes you can find a chart yourself as a starting point, but generally you sit down and listen to it and you work out all the parts by ear. That's where we're at now. Ear training, there's a whole lot of online stuff. Make sure you subscribe to my channel. I'm gonna do a thing on this where I talk about a really effective way to train your ear. So it'll be part of this series that I'll do that video at some point. But ear training, learning your scales, learning to sing them is really key, especially for vocalists. Because again, those people on X Factor who think that they can sing but they can't, bad ear, right? Because what they hear sounds good to them, but it's not, right? Everyone else can tell that that's way off, right? But they don't know because they don't have the ear to hear it, and again, they're not hearing the right voice anyway. So ear training is hugely important for musicians as well. Again, you need to hear those notes in the songs that are different. That clash I displayed earlier, you need to be able to hear that, right? And you need to know when you're right, know when you're wrong, and that's really going to optimize your practice. And by practicing the way we're showing with this gear is also going to help you to train that ear along the way. Cool. Moving on to tip number 9. Okay, so tip number 9 is to learn the song the way it's meant to sound. Okay, so if I'm a bass player, guitarist, keyboardist, drummer, vocalist, I am learning the parts as they are on the track. Okay, this might be a little bit controversial for some people, but it is actually important because the people in the congregation, when they come, the song that you are playing or singing, they've probably already heard, and they are used to what it sounds like. Okay, and in order for them to sing along to it, they want it to be the way that it is, right? So that they know where it's going. It's familiar to them. It resonates with them. Even down to what the bass and drums are doing, the song has the same feel about it, okay, as it did when they had a great worship time in their car on the way to work the other day, right? Okay, so it is actually important. And the first part of this is recognizing that our role when we're on the stage is to serve those people, okay? I see a whole lot of comments online about, audience of one, it's just me and God, this is my focus, this is me worshiping God, okay? It's important that we are coming from a place of authentic worship. It's important, definitely, that we are connected to God because we can't serve on our own strength, okay? But we are there to serve the people in front of us. Otherwise, sit at home and have your own worship time, okay? Which you should do anyway, but you don't need to do that on a stage. You don't have your own worship time on a stage in front of a bunch of people. That's just weird, right? You're there to facilitate an environment and a space where they can feel free to worship, okay? So it's important that we are making the song familiar to them. And also the part that you are playing or singing might fit in with another instrument. So if the bass player doesn't play a part right, then that might end up clashing with the drums that it's meant to match. When the drums does it stop and the bass keeps going, because we're not learning the song as it is meant to sound. Okay? If everyone learns their parts as they are meant to be, it'll be tight. It'll sound good, and that is going to make an easier environment for people to feel free to worship and praise Him. Cool. Moving on to tip number 10. Okay, so well done for getting this far. We're on to tip number 10 now. Don't forget to stay tuned for our bonus tip at the end though. It is hugely important. It might be hard to hear, but it is hugely important. So make sure you check that out. Tip number 10, however, is connect with the song. And I'm talking about in your practice. Okay, when you're practicing the song at home, whether it's a praise song or a worship song, make sure that you're listening to what the song is saying and you're allowing yourself to connect with it. And that might mean practicing it a couple of extra times, okay? Because to start with, you're working on how to play the song and get it right. But then once you've done that, make sure you are taking the time to go through it again and you are connecting with the message of the song and you're connecting with God and what is being said, because you can't lead people to a place that you haven't been, okay? So if you don't know what it is to connect with the song, you can't lead anybody else to connect with God through the song, okay? So hugely important to take the time to do that. Cool. Let's move on to our bonus tip. Okay, so our bonus tip now, and this might be hard to hear depending on the circumstances that you have found yourself in the past and maybe how you've dealt with those circumstances, but our bonus tip is to do all of this stuff with humility. And what I mean by that is maybe you've put the value on practicing. Okay, you've put the time into practicing, you've allocated the space, you've got all the gear, you've done all this stuff, you've worked hard, you've listened to the song, you've trained your ear so you can hear all the individual parts, and you've learned exactly what the bass is doing, exactly what the guitar is doing. You know all the stuff, you've learned all those harmonies, you've nailed them, you've spent hours and hours and hours and hours, and then you get there on Sunday and the worship leader changes the songs. Okay, it happens. Sometimes the worship leader will come in and they'll just, because they're praying, and they'll feel that these songs are just not right for today, and actually we need to do these other songs, or we need to just not do that song that you spent hours and hours and hours on, okay? And sometimes it's the other team members aren't up to speed on it, okay? They haven't put in that effort and that time that you have, and they're not ready to play it, and then we just need to let it go, okay? In both those situations, we as servants need to have the humility about us to be like, okay, that's cool. I know that I did what I needed to do before God. You know, I put the value, spent the time, did what I needed to do. And if it changes, then that's out of my hands. And I've done my part. All right? Okay, and sometimes it's tough. Sometimes it means now you've got to learn another song on the spot. Okay, but again, doing those things, the ear training, all of that stuff is going to help you to be able to do that. Because as you learn to practice this way, okay, the more you learn, the easier it becomes to learn. Okay, so your practice is going to get faster and faster and faster. And what a song that used to take you 3 hours to learn might now take you 15 minutes. Okay, because your ear's better, you know, you've got used to learning, you've learned a bit about key and that sort of thing, so you know how to work some stuff out, okay, and it just gets easier. So now if you need to learn a song on the spot, you can do that too, okay? Now, it's important that the worship leader is changing the songs for the right reason, okay, but even if they're not, like, you know, because I see a lot of stuff online about, the worship leader wants to change the key of the song, but they told us on the day, right? That's just lazy, because either the worship leader didn't practice the song, so they didn't know that they can't sing in that key, or they did practice the song, they know they can't sing in that key, but they didn't tell anybody, okay? They didn't give anybody a heads up, hey, I need to do this a tone lower, right? Whatever. Or they didn't spend the time developing their voice enough to be able to sing in a wide range. I know, I know that's a bit harsh maybe, but hey, you know, we're looking at things under the microscope here. So it's important that they are changing the song for the right reason, that they feel that's what the Holy Spirit is doing. But even if they're not, that's not my responsibility, okay? They are their responsibility, and that's between them and God, okay? My responsibility is to do my job, to serve the best that I can, to serve the people, to serve my leaders, and just do my part the best I can. And if it all changes on me on the day, then I'll walk with it, right? Okay? There's really no use in getting angry at stuff changing. If it's happening all the time, like if that was happening every week, I would be talking to people, talking to the worship leader first. If they don't listen, talk to your pastor about why this is happening. What are the things behind it? Is it a lack of preparation? And tackle those things so that you can put things in place so that everyone knows what they're doing, because it's important that everyone's time is valued, okay? All this time and effort that's been put in, it's important that's valued as well. Cool, I hope these tips have helped you out. Remember to hit that like and subscribe. We will see you in the next video.